Thank you very much. And welcome to Cats and Dogs here on Press TV with me, Len Bedopic. These days, Saudi Arabia looks a little bit like Her Majesty's London residence. That's Buckingham Palace, at least from the outside, royal and grand. But from the inside, Saudi looks a little bit more like Saddam Hussein's tiny hideout in Tikrit, that's in Iraq, in the days before his arrest, trial and eventual execution. Remember his hideout? It was a cross between a disused watering hole and a bomb crater. Just like the only apartment I could afford to rent in central London. In fact, if Saddam had moved to my apartment, he'd have surrendered long before he was found, because frankly, prison would have been something of an improvement. But I digress. Back to Saudi Arabia. The headline suggests the kingdom is going nuclear, is working on a 4-story submarine, is turning the seawater into Pepsi Cola, and is building a city run by robots. But behind the headlines, the Crown Prince is looking across the whole kingdom, searching for runaway princesses who made bad mistakes, like innocently asking some kind of awkward question, such as, "Why did you park your car in my space, Crown Prince?" Or, "Why are you losing the war in Yemen?" Or both, but probably not in the same sentence. Bin Salman tries to present himself as a progressive leader, but there's always something that reveals his true colours. As part of their public relations stunts, the Saudi king and his son recently enrolled on an organ donation programme. While they expected favourable feedback, it's worth noting they've previously taken a rather chilling approach to the same subject. Yes, folks, you could say this wacky father and son duo have already donated many organs, none of which belong to them, but to other people. I'm talking about bits of political dissidence, hands of young writers, and in some cases whole bodies. If organ donation was an Olympic sport, you could say that this Saudi father and son team would have won gold for the doubles event, as long as they could get away with donating by proxy. In the cultural sphere, the Saudis have unveiled plans to develop the world's biggest living museum in Al Ula by 2035. Is this a museum of modern history, perhaps? In which case, exhibits could include chained migrant workers and imprisoned activists, with people paying to view them, which has the added advantage of therefore covering the cost of their imprisonment. All of this goes a long way back, in fact, to mummified kings who were so keen on the idea that they kind of imprisoned themselves, except that when they were mummified, at least they were already dead. In an immersive reality experience, there could even be a sheer protesters section where they shoot at you with real-life live ammunition. And if they do all that, then this museum will still appeal to a few crazy thrill seekers, plus anyone who lives in Chicago or Detroit, who'll walk around saying things like, "Hey, it's so safe in here, it's just like home." But with Saudi Arabia, redemption is always just around the corner. So, to please the religious community inside the kingdom, Bin Salman has declared that the Holy Quran is the kingdom's real constitution. So is this why he is observing Quranic commands so strictly? For example, to lead a simple life, as the Quran orders, the Crown Prince has resisted extravagance and bought only a small yacht, worth just under $500 million. And for accommodation, he's cut right back and acquired a humble abode belonging to Louis XIV in France, also for around $500 million. Which incidentally is quite amazing to me, considering most things get cheaper when they get older. He also prays on days and nights for political prisoners in Saudi Arabia. And for consistency, he does what he can to give money to the deserving poor. Or as we like to usually call them, the international arms trade. The Saudi royal family also love colours. In a recent move, they've selected purple for the Royal Guard uniforms. That's also perhaps to differentiate them from their friends using the black colour, namely Al-Qaeda and Daesh, who presumably took on black at the suggestion of Saudi itself. This way, if Saudi and Daesh ever face each other in a World Cup football match, it'll be easy to tell them apart. Daesh will be the ones in black with improvised explosive devices, and the Saudi players will be in purple with guided state-of-the-art footballs that find their own way straight to the back of the net where they explode. What's missing now is the colour pink, which can be used for women's rights detainees, and red for Saudi intellectuals living in exile. Oh, and white for the sanitising of the media sites reporting on the crimes committed by Al Saud. It's a rainbow agenda where everyone wins, at least according to the modified reporting.
أنا لازمني صاحبي قلت له لبيه لحان الطلب معه وعاد فيها ولا فيها.
Recently, in a rare show of discontent, the Omani people took to the streets protesting against the absence of work. Faced with huge joblessness at home, people in Saudi Arabia welcomed the idea of protesting. But since they dared not take to the streets, they decided to go online and support the Omanis instead. Demos by proxy. That's got to be a commercially sellable idea. Anywhere you get shot just for standing in the streets. I wish I'd thought of that, and then I'd have sold the idea to people in Detroit and Chicago. Until quite recently, people in the kingdom didn't know what the right to protest is, just as they still don't know what the right to an election is. Strangers to the ballot box, they still wonder why people in Iran line up every now and then, while Saudi authorities do try to explain why that's a really bad idea. Perhaps that's why Prince Salman is going to build the city of Neom, inhabited by automatons rather than humans. Robots neither need nor care about things such as human rights, people, or voting. Let's see what our cats and dogs time machine has this week about the future of this city.
1,000 years ago, the Saudis planned to build a city run by robots. They called it Neom. Neom was the first city in the world without cars. Security forces would take the citizens to their destinations. In Neom, robots near Bin Salman's palace were part of the upper class, while other robots belonged to the working class. The city had a population of over 1 million, but new citizens would be imported from abroad when execution rates would skyrocket every few weeks. The Saudi prince ordered his scientists to work in addition to artificial clouds and moon, and a number of artificial writers and intellectuals, as well as artificial voters. The Neom tourist project brought the Saudis billions of dollars, which they spent on suppressing political activists and destroying Yemen. The city was built in the farthest location from Yemen. On bin Salman's orders, Neom was built by the Red Sea. That way he could escape with his yacht in case the robots rebelled against him.
While modernism is in full swing in Saudi Arabia, human rights bodies have criticised the kingdom for an increasing number of arrests. Those poor Saudis have double trouble as they seek to balance the freedom of expression, especially to their writers and intellectuals in front of the international arena, while embracing the age-old tradition of dismembering opponents. So the Saudi Ministry of Education has introduced two interrelated courses, namely critical thinking and self-defense, so they can honestly say that when a Saudi citizen expresses their views, their chances of survival are slightly improved. The Saudi approach to addressing women's employment is also laudable. Spiralling inflation in recent years has forced Saudi men to let their wives go out to work, as the men can no longer earn enough money. The Saudi authorities have promised to increase the women's employment rate from around 11% to 36%, perhaps by increasing the inflation rate to over 60%, so everyone's too poor to stay at home. Yes, it's a laugh a minute with economic Saudi style, where you might as well buy your lunch in the morning because you won't be able to afford it in the afternoon. That's it for this time. Join me again to find out what that wild father and son team in Saudi get up to next, how the Crown Prince is coping with the humbling experience of owning such a small $500 million yacht, and whether controlling protests will be approved as a televised blood sport. That's all on Press TV with me, Leonard Opik, and Cats and Dogs.